Hi, this is Rod Faulkner, and you are listening to the 7thmatrix.com Eye on Sci-Fi podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 88 of the 7thmatrix.com Eye on Sci-Fi podcast, the podcast where we share with you terrific indie, science fiction, and fantasy, online short films and web series, as well as conversations with fascinating filmmakers and other creatives. Thank you for joining me. This episode is a very special expanded edition featuring my conversation with a dynamic filmmaking duo behind one of the most exceptional sci-fi short films that we've covered this year on the 7thmatrix.com. The name of the short film is Who Among Us, and it is about the most popular Japanese game show in history, in which 6 contestants selected from all over the globe must determine which one of them is an android that looks indistinguishable from human beings. The creative force behind Who Among Us, the filmmaking team of Rebecca Kahn and Abhi Prasad, were kind enough to sit with me and share the process of bringing Who Among Us to screen, and they also were very generous in delving into their experience as filmmakers in order to share words of wisdom and encouragement to anyone out there who is interested in filmmaking or pursuing a career as a filmmaker. It was a terrific conversation. So without further ado, please enjoy the Eye on Sci-Fi podcast conversation with the filmmaking team of Rebecca Kahn and Abhi Prasad, the creative forces behind the extraordinary sci-fi short film, Who Among Us. Rebecca and Abhi, welcome to the Eye on Sci-Fi podcast.
Thank you. We're glad to be here.
Yeah, it's so super cool to be doing this and discussing our work. That blows my mind right now.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you. And of course, we have you on to talk about your new sci-fi short film, Who Among Us. And before we get started, though, I just wanted to ask you guys a few questions about your background in filmmaking, because you're filmmaking partners, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, when I did my research, Rebecca, I know that you're Puerto Rican Jewish, but you're based in Chicago. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm from Chicago. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then Abhi, your family immigrated from Mumbai to Canada, correct?
Yeah, we did when I came here when I was 3. So I lived most of my life in Toronto, which is a pretty cool film city right now.
Oh, fantastic. Now, did you two meet from when I did my research? I noticed that you both attended New York Tisch School of the Arts. Is that where you all met?
Yeah, actually, we met in Singapore because they had a campus at the time. And, we ended up working on a lot of projects together. And we just really formed a great collaboration. And ever since, it's just kind of been very hard to shake one of us off a project because we just love it so much together.
Oh, that is fantastic. And so you two decided to professionally associate and form Purdue Productions?
Yeah, and we've shot handfuls of commercials. We've done a couple different short films together. At first, we would direct our own projects, but then more and more, we started co-directing and developing that relationship and that shorthand of working together, which was difficult at first, but I think now we've really figured out how to split the director's tasks in two. And it actually is really helpful because if you don't have an answer to something, you can look to your co-director and be like, okay, he knows.
Yeah, when Beck says difficult, it's really funny. Because initially I was like, no, you're not gonna jump on the creative, because I'll be honest, we have a relationship outside of our work.
Okay.
She is my wife.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, and it's funny because initially when we started, I was very much against it because I know how stressful film sets could be, and I didn't want to ruin the thing that I enjoy the most with her, which is my relationship with her. But what happened was we just got into sync, and we started first it started, she was my DP, and then I was her DP, and then we got to a stage where we're like, why don't we just direct together? And then, as Beck said, it's great to have somebody on set that you can sort of go to if they don't have an answer. The way I see it is, filmmaking is a scenario where trying to prevent the world from burning. Sort of nice when the world is burning. You have someone there to hold your hand and be like, well, this is what's happening Saturday. And that's kind of what solidified our creative partnership. And it's also influenced a lot on how I approach. Now, I'm speaking purely just as a man myself. Her input really, really makes our films, I believe, that much better. She makes me think of things differently, and especially with the Me Too movement, and just it's so easy to fall into those traps. And having someone as like a creative powerhouse like her on my team, we end up creating, I think, richer, bolder stories that I don't think I could do myself, and I would hope that's true in the other capacity.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh wow! So it's really become a real family affair with you two.
Yes. we look at our films as our babies, and we put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into our work, because we are, like, I feel like if you're a filmmaker and a director, you are passionately insane. As I would say, it's because we really spend a lot of time doing this and perfecting our craft. A professor at NYU once told me, he goes, you can learn craft, but the hard part is articulating your ideas. And I think we spend a lot of time massaging those kernels. Because if we don't, then end of the day, the project at the end of the day kind of falls flat. And I feel like any major director today kind of goes through the same hoops. It's like, is it worthwhile? Do we do this? Is this a new way of thinking of it? And how could we make it better? And that's kind of the conversations that we genuinely have. And it's kind of nice to do that, like before I go to work or we go for a cup of coffee. And it's kind of like how we operate. Beck, any thoughts to that? No, she's on one.
Okay, well, I'm going to pose this question to both of you, and just whichever one of you want to chime in first, but who were some of your filmmaking influences?
Oh man, that's a loaded question.
Feel free to unload on me.
I'm going to give it to you, Beck. Go for it.
Okay, well, it's always changing, to be honest. There's, the directors that influenced me, when I first decided to get into filmmaking, was probably a little more like Oscar Ferrati, Bella Tarr, very, I guess, stripped down filmmaking. And okay. More and more, I'm liking more fantastical stuff. Like, Guillermo del Toro is like one of my favorite all time. I know Abhi has a lot of like science fiction influences in his work. Mine kind of is all over the place.
Yeah, for me, I would say, well, see, my favorite director changes from time to time because I'm always amazed. The director's career isn't just nailed to like one piece of work. It's an evolution. So right now, I'm super crushing on Denis Villeneuve. He's been killing it on the sci-fi front. Every single film that I've watched of his always leaves me like with a question mark. But beyond that, I agree. Guillermo del Toro, oh my God, I love his work. His just detail to the world is just so beautiful. David Fincher, I can't not talk about him. He's just incredible. And Oscar Ferrati too. And recently, Bong Joon-ho.
Wow.
His work in Parasite has really, I love Korean cinema. Like a lot of my favorite films, actually, weirdly enough, come from Korea. They really just push the envelope, and then they see where it goes from there, and they don't care. And I love it. I love it. I genuinely love it. But those are the things that I influence. But obviously, you could always go with the greats. But those are my current slew of directors that I'm like, wow, like look how they use the camera to tell the story.
So there's so many inspirations to draw from in your own work.
Yeah. I think when we draw from our work, we look at the films objectively. I don't think we actually be like, oh, I'm going to shoot like David Fincher. I think that defeats the point of being a director. I think we look at their work and be like, this is what they've done right, and how can we do the same thing but better, or if not, make it our own. I think a lot of directors forget that. Don't you agree?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to find your own voice.
Yeah, it's a lot more effective when directors don't try an ape style, but just translate what they enjoy about filmmakers that they admire and use it to actually tell stories in their own voice.
Yeah, absolutely. Steal like an artist.
Exactly, exactly. Well, I know that you guys have already worked with some pretty prominent clients. For instance, you've worked with let's see here. Okay, you've worked with Nike Singapore, Red Bull, and the United Tennis Association. So those are some pretty big names. What did you both learn from working with clients when you started to really begin producing your own work?
Well, usually working with clients, there's an intermediary. So sometimes we don't even get to like speak to the brand. Usually it's like an agency that hires our production company. But a lot of times they have, very specific things that they want and that you have to deliver on. It's very different than, directing your own narrative stuff where you just kind of have like free reign. They have to sign off, like on casting, on the exact wording of the commercial and stuff like that. But it's, it's a different beast, but it has its own,
It has its own ups and downs. I mean, for your audience, if they're looking into commercials, the very first lesson and probably the hardest lesson every filmmaker has to learn is that you are not the creative person there. I mean, yes, you're going to be executing. I think that's kind of like the nature of the job. It's like, hey, agency one comes to you and you're like, do this. And you're like, okay. I mean, yes, you can push back, but generally 9 times out of 10, you're going to have to deliver. They're the ones footing the bill, and you have to. It's an art of tact, if you will. And, when you're in those particular situations, your job as a director is to keep the actors happy, the agency happy, your crew happy, and you want to ultimately get the product out, because it is a very business-centric form of creative. So for future people who are listening to this, yes, know that is not your work of art. Know that you are going to be shooting frames that you are not going to agree with. And know that at the end of the day, what you want to do is build your portfolio. So example for USTA, man, casting took a while. They wanted the right person, and they wanted it to look perfect. And they were, weirdly enough, in fall time in October, it doesn't snow. They were concerned about snow in October. So that's okay. It's like just the mindset of the advertiser or client. They want to, they're paying you money for a particular product. You have to deliver. That's basically the equation.
But of course, when you step out and produce your own work, you have full creative control.
That is what we do the commercials for. To have those moments and really, really, really tell that story. Because I can promise you right now, with Who Among Us, when I pitched it to a couple people, literally there were question marks above their heads. They thought it was great, but they knew my reputation and Beck's reputation, where they trusted us. And when it finally came out, they're like, only you guys could pull that off, because that was special. And they're like, you just saw that vision. And that came with a lot of practice, a lot of grief, a lot of failures. But when you get there and you can say, hey, this is where this story is going, and it's going to be awesome with confidence, chances are 9 times out of 10, when you're at that level, you can, and it will, and you'll have that confidence. Anything else, Beck?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say a lot of filmmaking, especially as co-directors, is trust, and to be able to see the other person's vision. And if there's part of the vision that you don't understand, you have to trust the person that they know how to execute it. There's a lot of times that, I have like an idea of great shot, but I, only partially can like articulate it. And I'm like, Abhi, just trust me. This is going to look amazing. And he's like, okay, I trust you. And then you just have to have that, that level of collaboration where you can, trust the other person,
Yeah, we have a very strict rule. Every frame we shoot, if one of us doesn't like it, we don't shoot it. We don't waste our time. It doesn't make sense to waste your time.
Well, and that's the difference with commercials. It's like the brand, they don't know you personally. You don't have that existing relationship. So they have to, in a way, trust you that you're going to deliver on what you said that you were going to deliver on. And so that it's kind of like a responsibility to them saying, okay, this is what I told you the commercial is going to look like. And, I have to deliver that to you, because that's it. There's a level of trust in that too.
Yeah, so the best way of saying it's two sides of the same coins, right? Heads and tails. Just know that the other side will never see the other side of the coin, because
exactly
it's a different way of thinking. And I think we have become really proficient at that. So like if somebody does come to us and they want this, this, and this, we can deliver. But when it comes to our own projects, we utilize some of the, I guess, skills we've learned from commercial production, because at the end of the day, we know, I mean, this is I don't care what any director says. And if you're an indie director, your biggest enemy isn't budget. It is actually time. It is time. You only have a 12-hour day, a 14-hour day, and you have people helping you for free, pro bono, and you got to respect that. You got to respect it. And if you don't, what you do is you have people who don't want to work with you down the road. And if you can't figure out your shit, pardon my French, within the 12 hours, then you're only just going to have a mediocre film. And that is kind of what commercials have taught us is, yeah, you only have X amount of time. You got to get the product finished, delivered, and perfect. How do you do it? So that's why I said we implement that rule. If we don't like a frame, we don't hit record, because it's just a general waste of time. And we don't have that. And another thing that we've also discovered, we don't do playbacks. And all filmmakers out there, don't do playbacks. If you have a time to do a playback, you have a time to do another take.
Now, Abby, for we laymen, what is a playback?
So a playback is when you shoot something and you say, let's see the last shot so I can confirm if it's good or not.
I see.
And it just doesn't make sense because, in my opinion, like the only time would you say, Beck, the only time that you would do that is if you're doing like a very like technical heavy shot. Mm-hmm. It's like you really want to make sure you got it, then you can do it. But otherwise, if it's like a take where it's like, oh, I want to see his like little performance, no, just do it again, because you can, in that same amount of time, just get another take that will help you in the cut.
Yeah, which is with digital, you can rewatch everything that you shot right away. It's very tempting.
Yeah, it is. It is.
But for the essence of time, it's best to just go forward. And something that you stated, Abby, that I really, really agree with is that number one, for indie filmmakers, the most precious resource is time. But then number two, maybe right under that, is relationships. Mm-hmm. And for indie filmmakers to value the relationships that they make with people, like the actors that maybe for your first few films, they may come in and you may not be able to pay them, but they volunteer their time, but make sure to cherish and nurture those relationships. Would you agree with that, you both?
Oh, definitely.
Oh, absolutely. Trust. Would you say trust is like literally the backbone of like indie filmmaking right now?
Yeah, well, I mean, especially with actors, they have to trust you. They have to feel comfortable on set in order to give you their best performance. Like they're putting themselves out there. Like as a director, you get to hide behind the camera. They don't. So you really have to build that relationship where they feel comfortable, where they can bring everything to the table, and your end product is going to be better if you forge those strong relationships.
I'm just going to add to that. Trust with everybody on your crew. As a director, you're helming that ship. You're responsible for the creative vision. And most indie filmmakers are putting their own money into this. And, you want people around you that trust you and that they know that the quality of the product is going to be good. Because when you treat people, and this is something Beck and I do, and I'm still floored by this in our particular industry, be kind. I mean, when you're doing something, be kind. We had our production designer, and she sent such a heartfelt note after the production was over, and she was like, you taught me how to approach things in a way where you don't have to panic. You can actually sit there, think, problem solve, and you don't have to yell at someone. You don't have to put somebody down. And, I made this mistake earlier on in one of my films where my stress infected everybody else and we missed an important shot. And I learned something so valuable was that if I wasn't stressed out and if I wasn't freaking out and if I was calm, cool, we probably would have just done more. And, that changed my attitude. And I hope other filmmakers don't do this and pull their hair out. Filmmaking is not something you get into to be miserable. You do it because you love it. You do it because it's fun. You do it because it gives you so much joy. So why would I go make a film, be miserable the entire time, make everyone else feel like crap, and then ask them to come back on another project? They're not going to do that. They're going to be like, screw off, man. I'm not going to help you because last time you did it, it was just an awful experience. So part of being a director is, you have to keep your creative vision in line, but you also have to be empathetic to everybody there. You got to understand what they want to do. And, one thing that Beck and I do, wouldn't you say, is we ask everybody who joins us, PAs to DPs to everybody, what are your aspirations? How can we help you? Right? Because that is fundamentally how we believe the industry should work. I'm not a fan of the whole gatekeeping attitude that is there. But wouldn't you say that's what we do?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Abby and Rebecca, that is sage advice. And I know that there is a good amount of fledgling filmmakers and people interested in becoming filmmakers themselves who listen to the podcast. So I know that they will get a lot of value from that. And pivoting to why we have you on the show, definitely I want to just heap praise on you guys and find out more about Who Among Us. And when I got the press release, and it just gave a little blib about what the short film was about, I was immediately interested. And it is one of my favorite sci-fi short films that I've seen so far this year. It is extraordinary.
Thank you. Oh, my heart just swelled up. That's so kind. And your write up on the Seventh Matrix was like literally I have read that probably 100 times.
Well, thank you. It comes from a sincere place. And the first thing I want to ask you both is, where did the idea for Who Among Us come from? What inspired that?
Well, I think Abhi came up with it. There was one evening he was like, oh, you know what would be really weird? If there was...
Well, most of the best ideas come from Rebecca.
Okay, so I'm drawing a little bit of a blank, but I think it was a solution to a problem that we were having. And it was more so we were like, okay, I think this was a couple years ago. We just rolled off a production that we shot called Uplift, which is currently on the festival circuit. I'll tell you more about that after. What happened was we shot this amazing film, and I'm like, Beck, you and I have made these amazing projects now. We've had our festival runs. Now we got to start thinking bigger. And I was like, how can we make a film that is incredible in concept, but with no money at all? And this is what all filmmakers have to face, right? How do you make that feature with $0? Right. So the original idea, I believe I woke up one morning and I was like walking around the house, and my at the time I was with my parents, and there's nobody there, and it just something clicked. I was like, what if they're just cameras and people observing me? And then it just kind of blossomed into this. I was like, well, what if there were 6 people living in the house, Big Brother style, and there were cameras, and they're all trying to figure out who amongst them is a machine? And I thought, and then it evolved, and I don't want to ruin the ending, but the ending was from the get-go. That was what I told Beck, and she was like, holy hell, that is really disturbing, really, really wild. And then that's it. We never spoke of it again until a mutual friend of ours, our DP, came to us and said, I got this camera deal, and I love your previous work. You want to collaborate? And I think in that month we shot 3 shorts, and ours being the last. And that was the opportunity where we were like, holy hell, can we take that idea that we really like, distill it into something that's small? And then it kind of evolved to be the final episode of this ongoing game show with 4 billion viewers. And we kind of started building up the world. And literally, we wrote those pages in less than 6 weeks.
That is amazing. And what one of the things I should say that I really loved about Who Among Us is that it touches on artificial intelligence in a way that I've seen a lot of short films that are well done, and this is really not only in film, but in all of sci-fi media. The rise of true artificial intelligence is a very popular topic, because we actually have artificial intelligence, a form of it, in our lives right now. If you have a smartphone, you have pretty much probably installed an artificial assistant like Google Assistant or Cortana or Amazon's Alexa or Apple's Siri. And so it's kind of a cultural anxiety about what happens when we have true thinking machines. But I have never seen that topic framed in the way that Who Among Us is framed. Why Japanese game shows? Because they are so wild in real life. And you guys just replicated that scenario perfectly. Tell me more about that.
I mean, I think with stories about AI, you have to remember that a lot of it is, about how it affects us and how we feel about our own humanity and how that changes our definitions and all that. I won't tell too much about the short, but that, it does change how we see ourselves. And if there is AI, what does that mean to be human? If they can do this, this, and this, then what is left that keeps us being human? That's the more serious part. The Japanese style game show is just, with entertainment in media, like literally anything that's out there. As humans, we find a way to commercialize it, a way to make it into entertainment.
Yeah, there's a thing about humiliation that is super popular, and specifically with Japanese game shows. We ended up watching, I think, hours upon hours of game shows on YouTube, from like MXC to Jeopardy, and we analyzed it. We studied them. We were like, well, what makes a game show, and why does it feel the way it does? And furthermore, game shows, on all of them, any game show that you watch, there is this attitude that is similar to that of the gladiators. In the Colosseum, you watch people like kill themselves, and that's entertainment. I mean, that's horrific, and you think about it today, and we still do this. Right. We still take a lot of pleasure in watching people get humiliated on TV. And it happens everywhere, specifically to women in gaslighting. Like, there's so many political events that have happened in the last while where someone's like, well, it just happened to me. Well, we're going to completely ignore it, and it becomes a bit of a spectacle. And that's kind of why we like Japanese game shows, is because they don't care. That's the entire point of watching their shows, because they're so audaciously wild.
Well, one Japanese game show in particular that we had watched while writing the script is, I think it's called something like Is It Chocolate, where celebrities, they go into a room and everything is made out of chocolate except for like a couple different things, and they have to bite into it and guessing like what is chocolate and what is real. So it's just like a really, it's playful, but it's also kind of like you want to see the person bite into
a doorknob
shoe,
or a real shoe, and laugh at them. And at the same time, I think it was sponsored by a Japanese candy manufacturer.
Yeah. That is so surreal. And I'm a chocoholic, so I wouldn't do well in that situation. They would have to probably cart me out of there on a stretcher. So I can't even imagine. But something else, too, about Who Among Us is that not only Japanese game shows, but here in the West, our obsession culturally with reality television is also factors into that. Especially you guys integrated the aspect of having judges that judge the contestants in this game show. And that immediately came to mind, how there is a voyeuristic, I should say, type of attraction to all of it, the game shows, the reality television. Would you agree to that?
Oh, yeah. Voyeurism is something that everybody does. As much as you say, oh, no, I'm not cared about someone else's business, that's not true. Everyone does at some point, like, oh, yeah, this is what's happening. I mean, think of Facebook, Twitter, all these other social media platforms. Like, yeah, of course you're looking at somebody else because you're fascinated, nothing other than you're just curious. And voyeurism was a huge part of this project, because how insane is it that we want to see someone at their worst and then laugh or engage with it, and that says more about people at the end of the day, right? I think that is a very, weirdly enough, human thing to do.
Absolutely.
And yeah, voyeurism was a huge theme. We centered it with gaslighting, because I think gaslighting is such an interesting, bizarre concept, to be told something and then you believe it, whether it is objectively true or not, because of pressures from X, Y, and Z.
Right. And that really does come to bear. And I have to also bring up your remarkable cast. Terry He, Susanna Borosic, Kingsley Ngati, thank you, did amazing job. So how difficult was the casting process for Who Among Us?
Well, we already knew Kingsley and Susanna, actually. We had worked with Susanna as a voice actor in one of our previous shorts.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and she was great. She's so funny, actually. she's got a great sense of humor. And so we called her back for an audition, and she was just fantastic.
She nailed it. She literally nailed it.
She did. Her performance was just breathtaking.
She's an incredible actor. I mean, they're all incredible actors.
Yes.
We approach our auditions very differently than most. We don't come in. It doesn't make sense, in my opinion, to like have people come in and be there for 10 minutes and then make a judgment call based on that. We don't do that. We give ourselves about half an hour to 45 minutes per. We ask them to do things, and then we kind of judge. Like, for example, Terry. Terry is an incredible actor, and he came up to me after the short was done, and he basically said, Abby, you don't understand how hard it is for like an Asian person like myself to get really compelling roles. Either we're feminized or we're put in like really cheesy things. And this particular role was incredible because he got to be super aggressive in this incredible way. And he came in ultra prepared. And this is what I've noticed, because I'm a person of color myself, and he came in with his suit. He came in as the character. He left with that role. And Kingsley also came in. And something that I generally did was I knew Kingsley personally, and I didn't want to have a bias towards him because, you know, that's generally happens. So Rebecca had never met him. So I left that decision to her, and she was also floored with his performance, and they all sort of came together. But I will say Susanna did work with us, and her comedy, I think one thing for her is she's really funny. And I think that translated really well to drama. One of our professors back at NYU said, if you're going to do comedy, where's a tragedy? And if you're going to be doing tragedy, where's the comedy? And it took me years to understand what he meant by that. And what he really meant is that when you do a tragedy, what is the thing that people are going to look at and be like, well, that's a very funny and odd perspective, but it's also quite tragic. And when you do comedy, you know, when you think of most comedians or anything funny, you're like, that's kind of sad, but that's kind of what it is. It's the opposites. It's why those mediums work as well as they do is when you can isolate those elements, they become just that much richer. So I think Susanna's comedic ability translated really well to a dramatic performance. And I was very, very happy with all of it. Beck, anything else?
Well, and Terry, actually, he has a YouTube channel, and he's done, like, presenting before. So he had this, like, kind of host voice already. He already had this, you know, knowledge that he could bring to the character, that just, you know, gave him a type of authenticity that I don't think we would get with anybody else. And I mean, also, like, all three actors, they're just, like, incredibly committed. They'll go to, like, you know, they'll push themselves. They'll do something, you know, that's a little more out there. Like, they are very passionate people. And I think that, especially in casting, like, that's a huge thing, that you're going to commit to the role, and go there.
Yeah. And when we decided on the cast, we spent a lot of nights just having them rehearse, practice, go off book, improvise. I wanted them to build a natural rapport with each other, because that is ultimately, I mean, the logic was they've already been on this game show for 9 or 10 episodes. They kind of know each other to a certain degree. So taking actors that have never met each other and giving them the opportunity to, like, just bond, that is also very, very important. I think a lot of directors don't see that. In previous films, if they were like antagonistic forces and they didn't know each other, then I would make sure that they had a little bit of tension between each other, you know, and that's all before camera rolls. That's kind of like setting up the stage so when the camera does roll, those intricacies come out a little bit more richer, right? I mean, for example, like she said, he was a host, he built a rapport, and they were like super friendly in the beginning, which is really, really nice because that's what happens in game shows. It's based on reality, right? So we spend a lot of time massaging those details. And that was specifically taught at NYU to us. It's like literally just specificity, specificity, specificity. Make sure it's clean. Make sure you know everyone and what they're doing and what their relationships mean. And I mean, it's so weird. Like you're as a director, you're just managing all relationships. And when it's done right, I think you're a great sounding board for this. You like the film. You see the characters. You see them real.
Exactly. What is one takeaway, and of course this is posed to you both, what is one takeaway that you want viewers to get from Who Among Us?
Oh, wow. Beck, I'm going to pass this off to you for a second. I need to think. That's distilling it down to one is a bit challenging. Give me a second.
I
Sure.
would say, to this is to do with Susanna's character. Again, approaching AI from this point, and it's like, how will that, affect how we view ourselves, and will we allow it to change who we are? For me, it's more about that, about how we see ourselves as technology continues changing. It changes our behaviors, it changes our self-image, and I think, well, at least I hope people get from the film is to hold on to that kernel that you know who you are, and to stay I guess true to that, and not get distracted by all this technology and stuff, pressures that are happening that can erode that.
Yeah, for me it was about groupthink. It was the idea that if everybody's going along with it, maybe you get dragged along with it as well, whether you are conscious or not conscious of it. I've been in many situations in my own personal life where it's just like everyone's going with the flow, and there's not been the individual who had the courage to speak up or say, I'm not doing this, or I'm not going to participate. Mm-hmm. And I think that is really telling with today's political climate as well, right?
Absolutely. I was just thinking that.
Yeah, I mean, generally the films that we try to make have a very interesting political undercurrent. We don't like bashing that political thing on top of people, because then it feels very contrived. Yeah, it's just cheap in my opinion. So when we do stuff like that, we really want people to first get enamored by the world, participate in it. And that's the big thing about this film, is you participate actively, and by the time you get to the end of it, you feel really crappy about it. And that's kind of what we wanted to do. I know that sounds ridiculous, but that's what film does. That's the magic of film, in my opinion, is that you get to experience something from one point of view, and then you as an audience also feel the change. There was one comment that just made me giggle with joy, where someone said, I felt incredibly uncomfortable. And I'm like, that is exactly what we wanted to do, because that's what's happening in our world. Everyone feels uncomfortable, but nobody knows how to talk about it. So first step of even making anything change is to acknowledge that. I'm uncomfortable with our political situation. I'm uncomfortable with this. I want it to change. I want better, right? There's no reason to not ask for that when you experience something of such. So that's kind of where I went. Groupthink can be a dangerous drug that everybody follows through and does the same thing, and there's no critical thought. And that's kind of what tickled my brain when we did this.
Yeah, that's a very important point to make, because in our current reality, groupthink and gaslighting, that's happening almost every day in so many different arenas, and we really need to be vigilant against that. So yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that, Abby.
Yeah.
We tend to get a glimpse into a much wider world in Who Among Us. So I was wondering, do you all ever intend on revisiting that world, either on film or via a different form of media, like maybe graphic novels?
Yeah, totally as a feature film. Actually, there's two schools of thoughts that we've both thought about. We could easily make this into a really cool 10 episode series where you kind of go through the entire game show things, and we can focus a little bit more on the behind the scenes. For us, the game show was a really cool vehicle to show what the front facing thing is, but from what we want to tell the story is what happens on the behind. And the second attitude that we want to, or at least the idea that we want to pursue, is a mockumentary feature in the realm of like What We Do in the Shadow meets Ex Machina.
Oh, that would be terrific.
Yeah, and it takes place after the events of this episode of the game show. And the premise of that, which I love, is that when I don't want to ruin anything for the thing, but after the ending of the film, a key character is petitioning to change the word human in human rights to sentient rights. And that would be the general mockumentary about what that means in today's age. And wow. Furthermore, the thing that really makes me love it more is this particular character accidentally gains his sentience, if you will.
That sounds fascinating, and I hope that comes to fruition, because in a lot of sci-fi, what seems weird and fantastical actually, when time passes, becomes issues that we actually have to grapple with. And I really did get that feeling with Who Among Us. I was thinking on one level, this seems really bizarre and surreal and definitely more into the speculative spectrum, but I could actually see something like this actually occurring if our technology catches up to the singularity that so many scientists are warning us about. I could actually see that because, again, you mentioned it, the game shows and reality television, it's almost like a modern equivalent of the gladiatorial games. And I don't see that going away anytime soon. So because of all of those aspects of the short film, it really is a singular viewing experience. And I know that you guys are going to get many more accolades and awards for it.
Oh, thanks, man.
You know, I'm a big, big fan. So what's next for you two?
Okay. Well, we have, man. So we got some good news just recently, and I'm happy to share it with you right now. So the title sequence of our film, the end credits with the little toys and the figurines,
yes,
just became an official selection for title design at South by Southwest.
Oh, congratulations!
Thank you. We literally found out like 48 hours ago, and we're like booking our tickets to like go because South by Southwest is like one of the best.
Yes,
and it's just we were like, our art is in there, and we worked with some amazing people to get there. His name is Jordan Turner from It's Got Stealth. I'm going to throw a plug in for him. Sure. And for us, we're really focused on writing this feature and getting it produced. I think there is a great story here that could
There's a lot of writing coming up.
Yeah, a lot of writing.
To turn this into a feature world, writing is one of those things where it's like you have to kind of lock yourself away and just really meditate on.
Oh, yes, I can relate.
Yeah, so there's a lot of writing for us. We're also obviously going to push this film furthermore. I want more people to see it. I want people to get excited. When people come and tell me it's like an episode of Black Mirror meets Westworld, like my heart melts. It's like, holy shit. That's not a compliment that we take lightly because, one, those are the two of the hottest sci-fi shows right now. And just even to be put next to them is kind of a huge deal for us. And it empowers us, to make something that was a lo-fi sci-fi. And that's another thing that we want to do with the feature is keep it a lo-fi sci-fi. One of my other favorite directors is Neil Blomkamp and Alive in Joburg. I remember watching it about 10 years ago. And I was just blown away with his ingenuity. I was like, holy shit, this guy wanted to show an alien, but he didn't have enough money, so he put tubes on a person's face and then blurred it out. Like, come on. That is just ingenious filmmaking to hide the identity of alien people on the planet without actually having to invest in VFX and prosthetics and X, Y, and Z. And that was kind of like a really like eye-opener for me as filmmakers. You can do a lot of fun stuff. Like, you are not limited to just the conventional shot, reverse shot conversations. You can tell that's why the medium is as good as it is. That's why people love watching film and TV, is you can do so much with it. So for us, we definitely want to make this into a feature. We have a couple other stories on the back burner that we're going to do. I don't know if you know this, and both Beck and I also have a tech company in augmented reality that we're playing around with, and we're going to be growing
fascinating.
That as
well. Okay.
So like when we do sci-fi, we literally like to say that we live the creed because not only do we develop technology, we understand it. And this is something that links us so well to the story. Let's, for instance, say a machine does gain accidental consciousness. That is a possibility because generally when you're working in technology, a bug can become a feature. Like it just happens. It's weird. It's like, okay, I coded this and then, oh, wait, that's really neat. And my greatest analogy to this story is Space Invaders. So as you play the game Space Invaders, it speeds up. That was never coded. That was just an accident that became a feature that made the game harder.
Really?
And yeah, it was. There's a lot of things in technology that happen purely accidental, and it basically kind of shapes the way we do our thing. And that is something that I find perturbingly fascinating because it really just showcases, wait a second, how much control do we really have?
That's true. And especially now where it seems like every technological leap that we experience seems to push us forward decades ahead. So there was a time when, now I'm going to date myself here, so don't laugh, but in the 80s when I was a child, one of my favorite sci-fi television series was Knight Rider, which was purely at that time in the realm of speculation, a self-driving car. Now you actually have self-driving cars. And it is just wild to me to see how through the decades our technology has advanced to where a lot of what was hinted at and conjectured in sci-fi stories, of course, the classic is Star Trek with, when you think about it, voice activated artificial intelligence for when they speak to the computer is via vocal commands, the little tablets that they used, of course, the communicators, all of that has now come to pass and is now an integral part of our daily lives that we just take for granted without a second thought. So that's always fascinating to me about science fiction.
Us too. Totally. I think it's so interesting that a lot of the things that we made in media have sort of come to reality. So it's kind of like a chicken. I always think about this and it kind of confounds me to no end. It's like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? So like, did the idea come first and then this happened, or was it technology, this, and then people thought more? And it's a really cool, especially in our time now, I think, for artists to think about what's happening next is so fascinating. It's kind of fun. I'm sure you think about it as like, oh, well, this could be interesting and this could be fun. And
also there's always a lag in regulation. So like something will, develop in tech if it's, I guess Google Home or all these products. It's like, okay, so what is the regulation? Is it like listening to you all the time? Where is that data being stored? And I'm sure that there's going to be more issues that happen after, these inventions kind of like reach the market. And that's also something that we're going to explore in the future.
Yeah. Sort of the line. What is that proverbial line humanity will not cross?
Exactly.
That's kind of the question mark that I think everybody's sort of like, well, is it the singularity? Is it when we reach that? Or is it beyond that? Or what's the point of no return? You know what I mean? Like, I think people now are really seeing the detriments of Facebook and social media and how it can like influence people. Did we all think of this 10 years ago? Did anyone think of it, that it could be used in such a salacious manner? No, but it happened, right? Someone thought of it, someone executed it, someone did it, and now it's calling to light. So it's kind of the same thing that we're thinking is, what's the future going to hold? And I think as artists and as filmmakers and storytellers, we have a pretty cool sword to go into this battle. It's like we can really just, we can extrapolate, because that's fundamentally what all sci-fi does, is it extrapolates. Like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, Iron Birds. Well, we have planes and no one thinks anything of them anymore.
Exactly. And another aspect, too, of science fiction that I enjoy that I also found in Who Among Us, whether it was intentional or not, but at least that's what I took away from it personally, is that science fiction can also be our version of cautionary tales. And you mentioned earlier in our conversation that no matter how complicated our relationship with technology gets, it's important not to lose our sense of identity. Mm-hmm. And definitely that for me came through in Who Among Us. And again, it is a wonderful work, and you guys know I'm a big fan, so I'm going to continue to do what I can to help spread the word about it. And for our listeners who want to find out more about you both and your future projects, where can they go online to find out more about you guys?
So at Human or Fake, you can find us on Twitter. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook. And if you're on YouTube, the best way to find the film is Who Among Us Sci-Fi. It'll be the first thing that usually pops up. I know, because I always like to check on it. I love it. I love the film just as much as you do, Rod. And I'm hoping, at least Beck and I, we have this firm belief that if we always put our best foot forward with our work, it inspires others to put their best forward. We want to elevate the medium. We want more people to be able to do this. And it's funny you mentioned technology. This whole film was made with some new technology. So the last shot of the film I'm not going to talk about, we ended up working and partnering with some pretty cool 3D printing companies in Toronto that helped us get a 3D model of our actor in order to achieve some of the VFX that we did.
Oh, so, wow.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I want to tell other filmmakers as well, is find those relationships. There's so much technology and so many people willing, if you pitch them a good product and an idea, that they might be willing to help you if you just politely ask. And then you get to learn this really cool facet of film production. And truth be told, what we did is very difficult to do. And we managed to do it under budget, and there's a way. And I think a lot of filmmakers need to start thinking like that. Is, I want to execute this particular vision, but how? So my recommendation is learn. Keep reading, learn VFX, learn the art. And I have to say this, and I think Beck will agree, respect your VFX artists. Those guys are getting put through the meat grinder. They need filmmakers and directors to understand that their work is not something that should be used to fix mistakes. I would much rather have a person on my team that can use their intellect to solve bigger problems, rather than, oh, you forgot to remove the lav mic. Oh, you need to clean this up. Don't do that to your VFX team. Ask them to think. Ask them to solve bigger problems, because ultimately what you're doing for them is you're setting them up for a far more successful career in that particular industry.
Well, thank you, Abhi, for that, because, again, kindness, professionalism, and respect will take you a long way. And Rebecca, before we end our conversation, I wanted to ask you specifically a question, one final question, if that's okay.
Yeah.
For women who are fledgling filmmakers or filmmakers who are trying to get their visions, bring them to life, and it can be extremely difficult, is there one piece of advice that you would want to impart to them to maybe give them some encouragement?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of women directors have such a interesting point of view, and to really think about what is your story that you want to share with the world. Like, we see so many, most of the movies that we see, like winning awards and stuff, are told from like a man's point of view. If you were to tell the same story, or if you were to flip the script and put a woman in the lead role, how would it be different? And how would you bring your specific experience and your identity to the forefront? I think that there's so much just like untold stories from women, and even like different people of color, like from different communities. Like, what is unique to you? What haven't we seen on screen that you have?
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to bring your distinct voice to the project.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, finding your collaborators is something really, really important. And one thing I am proud, I'm going to say it because I am really proud, we almost had 50% women working on our set.
Fantastic.
Yeah, we really believe in it. We had a diverse cast.
Yes.
We have a Puerto Rican Jewish woman, and we have an Indian man. And we want to live that creed. As we grow in our careers, we want to change that very thing, and it starts now. Whether your production is 5 people or 50 people.
Well, and definitely for women, working with other women, it just makes the set feel more comfortable, to be honest. Like, if you're working with like a bunch of dudes, it can be intimidating. But if you have like other women who understand that you're not as like maybe confrontational, or it's just a different style of communication. I think sometimes it's good to have people on your team that get you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both for sharing that, because that's an important message to put out in the world, especially in our current political and social climate.
Mm-hmm.
Rebecca and Abhi, this has been so much fun. Thank you again. I've really enjoyed it.
Rod, thank you. My head is still swimming because this has been such an incredible talk, and I'm really, really happy that you love the film. I mean, I'm saying you specifically because I remember a long time ago I was just like, I wish one person would just like something that I made, and I got it. My wish came true. And your love for it really inspires filmmakers like us and your followers. So keep doing what you do.
Oh, well, thank you very much. And again, your short film is exceptional, and I'm a fan, and not only of the film, but of you both. And I, again, congratulate you on being recognized by South by Southwest. And again, I'm sure that's going to be the first of many accolades. I'm going to include a link to your official website in the show notes of this episode. So that will also help listeners be able to find out more about you. And again, great job. And I wish you both every success.
Thank you so much,
Thank you
Rod.
so much. This has been really fun.
This has been amazing.
Take care.
Take care.
And there you have it, the Eye on Sci-Fi podcast conversation with Rebecca Kahn and Abhi Prasad, the filmmaking duo behind the remarkable sci-fi short film, Who Among Us. A link to our full published review of Who Among Us and a link to where you can learn more about this talented filmmaking duo will be included in the show notes of this episode. Just visit the7thmatrix.com and navigate to podcast, or use the direct link, the7thmatrix.com/EOSF podcast to access not only the show notes of this current episode, but an archive of show notes from all of our previous episodes as well. Hey everyone, before I sign off this week, I needed to ask your help. The work that we do here at the podcast and over at our official website, the7thmatrix.com, is made possible by financial support from listeners like you. When we founded the7thmatrix.com in 2013, we founded it with the mandate to be an ad-free space online showcasing the best in independent science fiction and fantasy, short films, and web series. What that means is that to this day, when you visit the7thmatrix.com, you will not be confronted with those distracting and annoying pop-up and banner ads or those really creepy Google ads that seem to follow you all over the internet. No, you will only be presented with the best in independent science fiction, short films, and web series. And we're proud of that fact. But in order to continue our work here at the podcast and over at the website, we do need your financial support. If you would, please visit the7thmatrix.com/support in order to learn all of the ways in which you can help us continue to do the work that we do. You can make a one-time or regular donation via our PayPal button or purchase one of our digital film guides. But either way, and no matter the amount, your support is vital to us, and we thank you. And that is it for this episode, everyone. Thank you again for listening. Make sure to never miss an episode by subscribing via Apple Podcast, Google Play Music, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And leave us a review and rating. That helps others find us, and we really appreciate that too. Make sure to visit the7thmatrix.com to discover the latest in terrific indie science fiction and fantasy, short films, and web series that can be found online. You can also subscribe to our newsletter, where we will send our latest discoveries directly into your mailbox. So until next time, remember, take a break, escape the mundane, and enter the fantastic. Take care.